dynamics and the reason these pantheons even came forward, and what, the seeding of the Luciferian agenda and how that sort of created this necessity for, those behind the scenes who were, kind of oversouls, becoming the demiurge, and then the Elohim, and then these pantheons, and then the Anunnaki, and then also the Egyptian pantheons, and how there was always a character like Enlil or Set, or, with Cain and Abel, just these dueling brothers, and just the goddess energy, and, just sort of like the Ra, the sun god, and his role, and how all these different dynamics have birthed forms out of the primordial sea of chaos that become archonic, because they're different, like, misharmonies or disharmonies between these aspects. Because Lucifer split off and was sort of like, rebelling in a sense, because it's a kind of a long story, and this is what my talks are all about, how that energy came into being and how it wants to control humanity through using the mother, the goddess energy. And that's what we see in rituals. And so the fact is that energy lost its ability to connect with source and to the light and became more parasitic, and is considered the light bringer, in a sense, to sabotage, the Christ Sophia energy that represents Venus, and to also be the ruler of this artificial matrix, playing the role of God with this sort of elitist crew called the Illuminati, which in actual fact was meant to be a group that was going to assist based on the higher principles of these pantheons that were actually wanting to help connect us and keep us in alignment with gnosis and with enlightenment and with our progress, because we hear about deities like Osiris and Isis who were absolutely, looking out for the benefit of humanity as parents, as primordial parents. But these opposing influences, which is the Lucifer energy, has completely devastated so much. He was considered a seraphim angel, and the fallen seraphim energy became reptilian, because it's the dragon energy, and that aspect that fell, becomes the lower reptilian octave of the serpentine energy, that when we activate Kundalini and we, become enlightened again and we connect with the divine union and sacred union, we're more in touch with the Quetzalcoatl, the plume serpent, and we're bringing that dragon energy back into alignment with Ma'at, that represents justice, because the universal matrix of the womb of the mother has everything to do with justice. That's where we hear about Ma'at weighing the soul, and all other, different scenarios in mythology. So, it's just really important to understand these stories, because we've inherited these dynamics, and what we feel in the biosphere, just in the energetics of the planet, and what these technologies are trying to keep alive are these distortions, and are, these aspects that connect to ego that can sabotage our connection to higher self. And that's what the Luciferian energy wants to do, because if it does that, it can keep us in prison because we're in a lower frequency. And so everything in our society encourages this kind of lower mentality so that it can achieve ascension. And I could go on and on and on and on.
You have a lot of information, and you talk fast, which I like. It's a lot of information that you have that I know is resonating with a lot of people. And what? We have an echo. Okay, we have some sort of an echo here. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. I want to ask you, Laura, what effect do you think the sun has on some of the changes that we're seeing, and we are going into solar maximum very soon. There's a lot of very interesting studies that have been done out there on the links between the solar maximum portion and major changes. One changes that some could see as good, changes that some could see as bad within the human population. What's the sun's part in all of this? Also mythologically.
Well, the sun really is, a portal to the grand central sun, which connects to the galactic core. So when we're, tuning into the sun energy and the rays of the sun, even though they tell us not to look at the sun, whatever people's comfort level is on that.
Online, all the time, your gateway to the world. AFR! American Freedom Radio. Give it to them.
And welcome back to Outside the Box Radio, right here on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. And by the way, previous shows are archived for free on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Laura Eisenhower is our guest. Cosmic Sophia Gaia 2013. Did I get that right?
CosmicGaiaSophia.com.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit more about the descriptions of these archons and how can we, I guess we'll incrementally get more into this in the second hour. I think I want to, my spirit feels drawn to do more shows about this in 2013. As we start to learn more about these systems of control and beings, how we protect ourselves and diffuse situations that may be created for us to work out of, get out of.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. And in terms of archons, though, we are talking about something that has been described to be drone-like, robotic, artificial. And even if someone wants to look at this from a Christian perspective and looking at how Lucifer operates from someone that's within a biblical worldview, the devil deceives by shape-shifting, by altering its form, by lying. And it seems like these archons, which are working for the demiurge, are doing similar things as well. And when people that have reports of alien encounters, sometimes they report different forms or different beings. So in a way, this isn't really going contrary to a lot of Christian thinking, even though there is some manipulation within religions as a whole. I guess, what is your take on that parallel between what you're talking about and some of the information in Christianity? And the other thing I was wondering about is, what part do you think Jesus Christ has in all of this? Was Jesus Christ a Gnostic?
Right. Well, when it comes down to it, the demiurge isn't necessarily a negative energy. It acts as an oversoul, and it's where the sound fields are broken down into light fields, which then, get immersed into our time matrix, which is 15 dimensions. So the demiurge kind of acts like a veil, but it's where, energy is filtered. It's also where we sort of identify with on a personality level, because it's just sort of around us and it's closer to us than, say, higher dimensional energy. It's just closer to the physical world, and in a sense rules the physical world. And so there's all sorts of, archon means ruler. So archons, when they were established, came from the demiurge as 7 powers that also relate to the planetary bodies. And so there's a positive and negative polarity in these bodies. And so the dark light of the zodiac would be sort of in the archonic controls, or sort of beneath the light of the zodiac, which would be, understanding 0-point energy and moving beyond the rulership, but more into the empowerment of the divine blueprint, which originated before the demiurge. Now, the demiurge isn't necessarily negative, but it holds and traps all these different scenarios that happen between these archonic rulers, which are also similar to the pantheons, where there is an opposing force, a Luciferian presence, that wants to kick the role of the organic creation out and implement this artificial one that does have to do with these robotics, where spirituality is externalized, where the Merkaba is externalized, and it becomes these sort of alien technologies where things are easily manipulated through technology, because one is functioning not in connection to source, but in sort of playing an egoic role as a ruler at the expense of others' free will. And so the demiurge is basically considered Yahweh, but Yahweh was sort of, kicked out and replaced by a negative entity from the Orion group, sort of as an imposter. And this is when the infiltration of the Masons happened, the Templars, and the original Illuminati, which were Grail keepers and ones that were holding this information in order to assist in the enlightenment of humanity. And so, everybody's sort of blaming the demiurge, and even the Gnostics do, because they're confused, because they know that the God of the Old Testament is kind of whacked, and the whole 10 Commandments is a little whacked, because no real source energy would say thou shalt not. I mean, that's just controlling, and that creates rebellion, and that creates separation and duality. So the Old Testament God, and what people consider to be the bad God of Christianity, or even, what became the Jewish identification with Yahweh, ended up, under the rulership of this imposter that these religions ended up listening to, because they didn't recognize it as an imposter. And so they became the hardcore sort of, religious dogmatic folks. And then on the other side, we're dealing with a rebellion that Lucifer connects with, which is, the abolishment of order and law, and the replacement of that with service to self, or just, free will, but, not in integrity. Like, who cares if you steal or harm, because, it's not about that. So he was able to sort of bring in a lot of the Anunnaki and a lot of the 7 archonic rulers into that lower vibration in order to be able to achieve this. And so when we're dealing with archons, we're dealing with archangels, which arch is the word archon. We have archangels, and then demons. So we have both positive, negative archons, and the way that those relate is what we have sort of inherited. And it takes a lot of self-control to be able to overcome the archons, because people all of a sudden will find themselves almost possessed by an energetic that they might have inherited from their ancestral lines, or that, it's just been played out in society as sort of what the masculine and feminine are. And people adopt this, and they don't realize it's archonic because it's not in harmony. And basically the archdemons, or the negative aspects of the archons and the demiurge, or the dark light of the demiurge, which isn't in its full expression because an imposter energy is there that wants to take over the throne of God, which one can call Lucifer. But it's also our own ego that likes to usurp the higher self and sort of lead it astray. It's the temptation of free will, which is egoic. So these demon type energies, kind of creep in. And when they creep in, the goal that they have is to split the harmony of the masculine and feminine within each individual and in external partnerships. That's why there's so much divorce, why there's so much promotion of sort of promiscuity, and why, so many people are kind of living polarized, where they're either sort of this artificial feminine or this egoic, archonic sort of control freak masculine, and nobody's identifying with the true qualities within, and that's just what the agenda is. So this is all archonic, and the demiurge basically is just sort of the biosphere. It's like that filter, and when we hit our head against it, we easily adopt archonic behaviors. When we can rise above it and get in touch with the Trinity, we're able to bring that light through the demiurge and into the physical, which is what the ascension process is about. But one has to clear and detox that demiurge energy of all the distortions in order to be able to bring in that blueprint. But it starts with awakening it within and recognizing that it's just as much within as it is external, similar to the sun. We have a sun, we have an internal sun in the planet, which is the core, and we also have the external sun, and then our alignment with the galactic, the grand central sun is what we're in right now as we're in alignment with the galactic plane, which gives us the opportunity to disconnect from the lower forces and upgrade our DNA and activate the blueprint, which is what the ascension process is all about.
And something else we'll touch on again tonight, even though you already have, but just to go over it again, that we're talking about a rise of the sacred feminine. And that's not necessarily man versus woman. It's the feminine within all of us, and also the divine masculine. And I think this is a very, very powerful concept to get outside the box of just man, woman, looking at the world through our own sexuality. I think that's a very important, and it's so refreshing to hear more people say that. We have 2 phone calls, and we have a few more minutes till the break, but we have enough time for the phone call from the 574 area code. Caller, welcome. What's your name?
Kevin.
Welcome to the show.
Hi. Hi, Laura. First time I've had a voice-to-voice talk with you, but we've shared before through emails. I wanted to share part of my story, which I've shared with you, which has to do with the Mars agenda. I've known high-ranking NASA retired astronaut for my whole life. And back in the mid-'90s, I was staying at his home in Houston, and we were talking about some personal matters, and he was, at that time, already retired from NASA, and he had a private company that was working on the physical implementation of a Mars colony. He was designing everything from transport vehicles to the actual buildings and the atmospheric generators. He gave me one time a calendar from his company which had mock-up drawings of all these things, and even a picture of what's called a space elevator. And what I wanted to, I'll cut to the chase, which was that he was working on the Mars colony project at that time, and he told me that the plan was to be there in 20 years, but then he looked at me and he says, "We'll be there in 10." And he has no reason whatsoever to tell anything to me that wasn't based on reality. And from that conversation I had with him, and then the events that led forward into the future, I'm certainly convinced that that probably